Welcome to Kettlebell Corner, where strength meets theory, where we take you on a deeper dive into all things kettlebells. And are you searching for that right intensity for your sessions? Well, in this episode, we're going to teach you how to build strength and skill without beating yourself to death. All right? It's all about the next day, Roger. The workout might be too hard. The workout might be too easy. But we got to find that right one, that Goldilocks zone. Roger, what's up?
Not much. Just trying not to beat myself to death with my workouts.
Just try not to beat yourself to death, period.
Sure. All right? way to raise the stakes and let the good people know how important this topic is.
Yes, that's right. We're not overstating this at all, everybody. So, we got to get you in the right spot. This episode, Roger, is all about that good feeling and knowing you did the session correct and you're not destroyed. Well, tell us about that, Roger. We got to know. Should you not feel smashed? How do you feel good? What is the Goldilocks zone?
So,
don't worry. I'll just edit this.
so many things to say. You should not feel smashed. That's a short, simple answer to your question. Your workout should not mean that you are feeling incredibly beat up. You should do just enough. We advocate for something called minimum effective dose. So maybe we should talk about that. What is minimum effective dose? Minimum effective dose is the smallest amount you need in order to make changes. And that can be deceptively simple. And people will often immediately discount it and say, oh, well, you're not working hard enough. Well, if you're not working hard enough, then the dose is not effective. Okay. It's just enough to be effective most of the time. We've got another one. Maybe you want to link that on programming where we talk about this whole 80% idea where most of the time you want to be about 80% intensity, whether you're using a repetition max method, whether you're using an RPE. You want to have a sufficient stimulus that's going to cause you to change, but you don't want to have something that is so hard to recover from that the overall weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly volume is going to be less. So what do I mean by that? If you're looking at just sheer numbers and repetitions, the volume that you do, if you work out too hard in a given session, which is okay every now and then, I'll do a really, really hard workout. I'll smash myself maybe once a quarter, not more than that. Sometimes this comes down to individual physiology, and this is how I work. More than that, I don't get results. But let's say I go too hard on a given workout and I have to take maybe a solid week and a half. It's not uncommon when people are doing heavy deadlifts, for example, where they're waiting a week and a half in between deadlifting sessions, because if they do it more often than that, they're going to get fatigued. This is, kind of high level. I'm moving heavy weight, but the principle still holds true. So if I'm doing more than that, right? If even though this is a high recovery lift, it's taking a long time for me to recover from this. Let's say I go even harder than that. Now all of a sudden I'm only deadlifting. I can't deadlift for 2 solid weeks. I'm losing some volume in there. And when we get into this idea of consistency and things adding up over time, you're getting less, not more. So minimum effective dose is about doing enough to create a stimulus, to make change happen, but not doing so much that you have to recover an inordinate amount. And it's a really critical concept, and a lot of people miss it because they feel like they should be smashed. Oh, I want to feel like I worked hard. Well, okay. Now, you've been a coach for a long time, and you tell me this, that I want to feel like I worked hard people. I've always seen them fall into 2 categories. They underperform consistently because they're always exhausted and they're used to it, or they're very flaky, they're inconsistent because they come out of the gate really hard for a short period and then something happens. Always something happens. And often they blame it on, life rather than their own stupid habits. But, they work out hard for 2-3 weeks and then nothing for 2-3 weeks.
Yeah. So, and a lot of times you don't see the change in their body or their performance, like you said. And it's exactly it. You're right on the nail. Wait, let's say you're right nailing the head? No, you're hitting the nail right on the head. If everything's a hammer, Roger, don't be the nail.
Exactly right.
That's sound advice.
So we're looking at this idea of minimum effective dose. So when you're asking yourself the question, how should I feel? You should feel that you did some work, because if you didn't do any work, unless it's a specified, maybe it's a low intensity day, some people call them mobility days, recovery days. You can't have active recovery. That's perfectly fine. But generally speaking, if you don't feel like you've done anything, your body's not warm at all, you're not struggling toward the end of any of your sets, you're breezing through, you're doing your 3 sets of 10 like every gym in America, and you're knocking out your reps, guess what? You're not changing. This is not an effective dose. So don't just key on the minimum. It has to be effective. Okay. You got the minimum part right. You don't have the effective part right. So that is not enough stimulus. Now, the other end of that is people talk about the effective part. Oh, I want to be effective. I want to make sure this works. So they do too much. They're overdoing it. And that's kind of what we want to get into, is what are some signs that you might be getting into that? We had a little bit of a prep, a little bit of setup, and we talked about some of those things. So there are some guidelines that will, or some red flags, so to speak, that will let you know that, hey, maybe you're going a little too hard. But you do want to consider, are my workouts easy? Do I breeze through them? Am I on autopilot? Is there anything that challenges me? If so, you're not in that zone. If you're crushed, if you're sore, you're in pain, you feel like you don't want to get out of bed the next morning, you've done too much. So this is really what we're talking about. Minimum effective dose. How do we do enough to make change without overdoing it?
Yeah. And if you're training for anything serious, you're going to realize that no program is going to be, or no thing is going to be your max out thing all the way through. What I like to do with people that I begin training, especially with kettlebells, because there's a learning curve and there's like things that are going to be a little bit challenging if they're a beginner, or even if they're experiencing kettlebells, I'll set the expectation that we are not going to be doing the highest in volume and the most intensity every single session. And that's that waiving the load sort of categories thing, I guess. In the sense of figuring out, are you in the right zone or how to get in that right zone? Let's start with the day after test, Roger. So the day after, you kind of alluded to it. You don't feel like getting out of bed in the morning. So obviously that's, a big key indicator. But what are some other signs that you've done it wrong the next day?
Well, pain is the big one.
Yeah. Like not just leg day pain, like you haven't done squats in a while and you've done pain, or what are we talking about?
No, we're talking about joint pain. We're talking about, the two main things you're going to notice. You're going to notice, one, you might have specific aches and pains. You might have specific joints. But two, you might also have just kind of an overwhelming fatigue, and that's more neurological. When you lift heavy, when you lift really hard, you just kind of feel generally blah. You might also be a little edgy. You might also be a little grouchy. So there are no really clear-cut signs. Now, some people will make an argument for wearables and things like HRV. I'm not going to dispute that. I'm not going to discount that. I am not convinced at this point that it's a reliable enough method, and or that we have a reliable enough tracking tool, and most people can be relied on to actually use these things. So if it works for you and you get a good idea, great. A lot of these apps will give you, smart watches and things like that. Rings will say, oh, hey, you're recovered. You're not recovered. There may be some utility there, but I also think there are times when you've got to also, trust your gut. And there are not a lot of clear-cut answers here. The dead giveaways are pain. The dead giveaways are stiffness. The dead giveaways are you're just not feeling right. But there are certain physiological things that will happen in your body in order to do that. You may notice a crazy spike in hunger. That's something that will happen with a lot of people, and even specifically craving junk food. that may be a sign that you're overtraining as well. But these things are, nothing's going to jump out with a literal red flag and wave itself and say, hey, you're overtraining. But you do need to pay attention to how you actually feel. And those are going to be the biggest things, just general pain and fatigue. One thing that I do want to address, I had a conversation with a client just recently, and it's about this idea of muscle soreness. So this particular client I haven't been working with for very long. And it was a really good conversation. It was candid, and I needed to be careful because he had worked out with a trainer before, and we're all
it wasn't me, was it?
It was not you. We're all at different places in our development. We have different philosophies, but mine is not one where you should be sore. He's telling me, I want to be sore after every workout. So okay, so we've got a couple months in the bag, and we're starting to compare. Okay, well, why did you come see me to begin with? We start talking about, I want to feel stronger. Well, do you feel stronger? Well, yeah. We're talking about lifts. This lift has increased 400%. That one's increased 200%. Like there's nothing that hasn't at least doubled. I wanted to get, rid of some of the aches and pains in my back. Well, have you done that? Well, yeah. So you've already done all the things that you want to do, but you're not sore the next day. So you feel like you're not working. So, well, yeah, when I worked out with the other trainer, I always felt sore. I felt like I did something. I said, okay, so how did you feel in general? Well, now that I think about it, I actually had to stop working with him because my back was always in pain. And, and I gained a bunch of weight because I was overeating and I was really inconsistent. And I was like, so these are things, again, not to bash anybody else, but these are things that we really need to think about. We don't need to be sore. We don't need max effort all the time. We need just enough. And if you have a KPI, key performance indicator, if you have actual set of goals and you're meeting those goals and you're doing that without a lot of effort or a lot of pain, then fantastic. It's only in the physical realm where I see this. If you were to put some money in the market, you'd be like, I was hoping for a 20% return on my investment, but I got 600% return. I'm not real happy with this. Like, I feel like I should have to work harder to get these results. Like, no, yeah. we like putting in a little and getting a lot back. And that's why it really is important. You got to pay attention, but you have to be aware of what it is you're actually working toward, and are these things happening? Because the tendency is to crush, is to let's make it hard. And if I'm going to have a really frank conversation, I am a personal trainer and a coach, and the people I work with tend to have more money than other people because they can afford me. The people I see regularly tend to have brag. They tend to have a mindset that is a little more extreme. We got to work hard. I got to push. I got to be productive. And it's really difficult to get some of those people out of this, I've got to overwork thing, but it is really counterproductive. There really are no questions. When you look at the best athletes in the world, they work hard enough. Every now and then they have a really hard workout. They'll do something called overreaching, and they'll make their system really, really, really work. That's fine. That's an advanced strategy. But most of the time, we need to do just enough. Figure out what your KPIs are, your key performance indicators. Are you meeting those? And if you are, then you're in a good spot. But if not, no good. But we did talk specifically about, the morning after. And that, again, really hungry. You don't feel like you slept well, general fatigue. And we're talking joint pain. We are talking regular muscle pain too. You should not be sore every workout. If you have muscle, not like, hey, I felt that these muscles worked. If your muscles are sore after every workout, you are doing something wrong. Full stop, period. Argue with me about it. Totally cool with that. You're wrong.
Put it in the comments. Well, and I guess, without crossing any lines, if somebody says they need to be sore after one of your sessions, Roger, you could just give them a Charlie horse, and then be like, "There you go." You feel that?
You sure could. And I do want to put a little asterisk in here, because this part is beyond my scope. I'm talking about general fitness, even some strength training. I don't know enough about high level bodybuilding to make that claim, so I'm not going to say that it applies to there.
Well, this is a kettlebell podcast, so
exactly right. So like I said, you will get sore every now and then, but not all the time.
Yeah, and
Right.
one thing to consider, especially in that beginning process of kettlebells, the process of learning those skills requires a lot of effort and requires a lot of energy, and typically we'll be using a lighter bell. So if you're in that end of the spectrum, and we've talked about this, I think you can reference the should I do 100 swings a day challenge, about the right amounts and what works for you at certain levels. But know that those things are also competing. So you're not going to be able to, do both at the same time. But Roger, let's talk about in a session. How do you know if you're in the middle of a session, you're doing the right stuff? And I like, whether you put it on this prep or not, I like that you should feel like you're honestly working. Like you're working, like it's not just, pitching and putting. We're playing the game here. That was a golf reference, Roger.
Okay. I had no clue.
Well, your clients will, because they've got enough money to afford you and golf. So
okay. The idea of being honest is, you should feel like you're doing something hard. Okay, that's the one side of the honest part. You shouldn't feel like you're doing something hard enough to challenge you. You should feel like, hey, I'm doing work here. Okay, and I should get tired after this. But this also gets into your reps. Am I breezing through part of this? Am I doing, shitty cleans to do decent presses? Or is everything nice and crisp? Am I cutting corners in order to just get through all of this stuff? Am I using maybe a little too much momentum? Am I fooling myself into thinking that I'm doing presses, but I'm actually doing push presses? So there are a few elements of doing honest work, but honest work means that it's challenging enough and you're maintaining integrity at the same time.
Yeah, and I think the honesty part comes into play particularly with something like ballistics, where you might see that number of reps you got to do is in the hundreds, 150, 200, but you're not prepared for that day for whatever reason, and you're trying to force that, and subsequently will probably tilt you into this overwork area for where you're at for that day. So that honesty is more or less, would you say, like an internal dialogue as well of like, okay, I am doing the right stuff, or is it just about what you said?
I think that's half of that. I think part of it is the internal dialogue, but there's also an element of we should be doing hard things as people. And
challenge yourself.
The majority of people listening to this, and even me saying this, I don't always do that enough. We should do hard things. Doing hard things that are safe and reasonable is good for us physiologically. It's good for us mentally. It's good for us emotionally. So we should be doing hard things. So it's not just, I don't want to overwork. I've got 3 sets left. Let me just cut it. Sometimes you need to do that, and that's okay. But you should push up against these boundaries a little bit and see what happens. So do you get this idea that maybe I should cut it short? Well, let's go back to your ballistics example. Are you slowing down? If the number of reps it takes, or the time it takes you to do the prescribed number of reps is 20 seconds, and you're using a timer, which is a great objective way to see, hey, am I slowing down or not? If it's still taking 20 seconds, and maybe this last set even took 19 seconds, you're probably fine, and you probably need to push yourself mentally a little bit. But forget about you're not feeling fatigue physically, you're not feeling joint pain, you just feel like maybe you want to stop. But if your reps are still solid, if you're not slowing down, push up against that a little bit. So it's a combination of objective and subjective. It's the rep max and RPE. Put a little bit of everything into it. Don't just immediately quit, because that becomes the new way of working out. You can give yourself all kinds of excuses not to do it. The smarter you are, the better you're going to be at it.
Yeah, and if you don't feel like you're pushing it, maybe one more rep might do it. All right, let's talk about the RPE. So typically this scale goes 1 to 10. And I found when I talk to my clients about this, they really are like kind of clueless as to what each number means. And I like what you did here is we break it down into 3 zones of RPE instead of that 1 to 10, because obviously if it's a 1 through 4, let's warm up at best. Okay, you're
Mhm.
walking down the street. So the first one we labeled easy was a 4 to 5. So what does that look like? Is that sort of a beginning session? That's like a more of a technique day, an easy day, if you will.
It could be. It could be a mobility day. It could be an active recovery, an active rest day. But yeah, the idea is I want to move, and there's utility in moving. So maybe it's to learn a skill or got a little time. It's a nice day. I've got this kettlebell. I want to go hang out in the park. There could be a variety of reasons for that, but generally it's when you crave movement. Movement will actually help you. You're doing movements that are a little closer to full range of motion. That's just a few of the reasons, but there are a lot of reasons why you might do that. But yeah, that's going to be the 1 to 4, and you're not expecting results. You might expect something that leads to results. So for example, mobility is going to, if you're doing mobility work, it might unlock some potential for you to push harder or better and get some results. But the work you're doing is not going to directly lead to any kind of real change because it's probably not effective enough to hit that threshold.
Got it. We often will talk about how we both like this, where we use a mace, some 360s and stuff like that to kind of bring ourselves online. And that's usually with the mace we use is it's probably like in that 4 to 5 range. Well, the productive range we have is a 6 to 7, which I like this because it's not going to be super hard. It's doable and it's repeatable, but it is above that, let's just say 50%. And we've talked about this in other episodes regarding, and this is in several episodes regarding the load that you need to use. And we kind of key in on that 70% of your maximum, if you will, for we use the press as an example, but 70% is a good range. So is that the thinking of why most our training should live in this 6 to 7 range?
Somewhere around there, and you got a little bit of leeway. You can make the range go up to 8. It doesn't really matter how you carve it up, but this is going to be your medium day. This is going to be the bulk of your work is going to be medium. So whether you call this 6 or 7 or 7 or 8, whatever, for the whole 80% thing, it may make more sense to call it 7 or 8. But either way, this is going to be the bulk of the work you do. These are going to be your medium days. Pretty simple. I want to go back to one thing though with the previous range, and I like to separate exercise from activity. Activity is what we need as human beings, and where exercise and activity cross over. So activity is just moving around, cooking, gardening, walking. That is going to be activity for a lot of people. But when walking goes from, let's say, a half a mile to 6 miles, probably getting into exercise territory for a lot of people, maybe even most people. So, it's going to be a subjective thing. Personally, I like to walk. My walks usually range between 2.5 to 4 miles. And when I'm in that range, it's just activity. I can do it. I don't feel sore after. I don't feel like I've made any progress, but I really enjoy doing it. Activity is essential for humans. It's really, really important. Forget about cardio or any of that other crap. We're just talking about moving around and being human. So that's activity. Exercise is something that is going to hit the threshold. So if we're looking at a differentiating point between the first threshold and the second, your 1 to 4 or 5 is going to be activity. Your 6, 7, 8 or 6, 7 is going to be, you've gotten over that threshold. You're now firmly in the realm of adaptation. You're not crushing yourself. You're doing just enough. This is where you're going to start to get results. They may not be the fastest, they may not be the best, but you have officially crossed that threshold into causing your body to change.
And one of the things that you can kind of rely on, I think, with kettlebells, and if you're in that sort of range, is that you can most of the time and most days train with your kettlebells and be all right if you're like in that range. Now, when you kind of push it over to the challenging set where it's like 8, 9, pushing it up there, and you're doing that more frequently, it can become an issue. It needs to be a little bit more selective. But because of the nature of kettlebells, once you get past that first sort of like learning curve, there's so much to pull from. There's so many things you can do that you can do it on a daily basis, and even if it's like a half an hour, but in that range, would you have any issues with that for somebody? And if somebody was doing that, how do they know if it's too much?
I mean, would I have issues with people staying on that 9-10 all the time?
Not the 9-10, but staying more in that 7-8 and then occasionally the 9-10. Obviously, if you're in the 9-10, that seems like it's more performance based, or you really got to test them. Now, say you're working a press max or something, or you wanted to practice your snatch test. If you've got something like that coming up, you're going to dip in that every now and again. Like you said, what'd you call it, overreaching earlier, or like an overreach phase?
Yeah. Every now and then, sure, you're going to go up in that, and you're totally fine to stay, in that 7 or 8. Is especially, it depends on the phase you're in. It depends on the lift. I don't know about you, but I feel a lot more comfortable at the higher intensities of grind lifts than I do at ballistic lifts. So whether we're talking about load, or we're talking about reps, or we're talking about how, the density, how many reps I'm doing in a given time. For ballistics, I do very well when I stay in that nice middle zone, probably about a 6. When I get above that, which I do sometimes, and I intentionally push myself, I don't get results as well. I tend to break down, whereas I could probably press it like an 8 or a 9 for a long time. That's just, that's just a lift I like. It's something that I respond to. I've been doing it for a long time, and I don't have negative results from it. And I even have tried to back off, and I do sometimes, and I've noticed no change. So there's going to be some variability here.
Sorry, go ahead.
No.
I was going to say, in that sort of scenario, especially with your ballistics example, in that sort of thing, you're just going to need more time to allow that training adaptation to happen then, right? If you're yeah. Sorry,
well, depending upon the person. But,
okay.
You're probably going to need more time to get to a point where you can train at the higher levels. But again, there are certain lifts you're going to be higher endurance at. There are certain lifts that are not going to take you a ton of time to recover from. There's some people who can swing every day, and there are other people who should swing 2 or 3 times a week. It really is just going to depend on where you are on the learning process and the adaptation process. So, there's really no way to say. What we can be certain of is, and this is, I think, important because most coaches on social media are putting out their 9-10 efforts. You don't see a lot of posts that say, "Oh, it's an easy day," and
I did 3 ladders.
Yeah,
32.
I will grab a 16 kilo kettlebell and do snatches with it regularly, just as a little addendum, as an add-on, and it's very light for me. But that's not the stuff that people are posting. They're saying, "Oh, another light day," and they're doing snatches with a 40 kilo kettlebell. Now their palms are bloody, and they're blowing out their back, and they're absolutely exhausted, and they're just claiming
10 pounds
it's a
of chalk at their feet.
Yeah. So, and they did 2 or 3 reps, and then they tell you that they did 4 sets of 10, whatever.
Yeah, good on you.
So it's important to realize that this is fantasy. This is not the way it works. That serious athletes do not train at high intensities regularly. High relative to the population, but not high relative to them. Just can say, "Oh, well, that guy can bench press 700 pounds. Okay, but his max is 975.
Yeah.
So, when you look at the percentage, don't compare him to you, compare him to him.
Yeah, and us as mere mortals, that's hard to say, by the way. Comparing ourselves to these pro athletes is a wildly foolish thing to do, because there's a lot of high-level training, there's a lot of genetics, there's some things in there. And you kind of like brought this up, but I want to talk about one thing that's another good objective marker to knowing if you're in the right zone for your training, and it's the rep quality consistency. So what are we talking about with that, Roger?
Are you doing good reps, and are you doing them consistently? That's
so the last 2 or 3 should match the first 2 or 3.
Sure. Again, there are always going to be exceptions. It's going to be very difficult to nail me down to just one thing.
Yeah,
because
I know,
do,
Mr. Depends.
I do believe in a certain situation that your form can break a little bit if you're sacrificing, let's say, that for load. If strength is the thing that you're trying to gain. Now, I'm not saying have bad form, but I'm saying your form pressing a 44 kilo bell does not need to be the same that it does with a 20. And there's some people who don't agree with that. And that's fine.
Yeah.
So,
you're silly.
Should your technique match in that situation? Probably not. But generally speaking, when you're in that middle range, for sure, your reps should all be good and they should all be consistent. And even though the last few were hard, they shouldn't be shaky or wobbly or ugly. As they are, that's a stop sign. It's time to be done.
Yeah, I like that. That's something I actually have been focusing on a lot lately with the training I'm doing, and then today, as a matter of fact. And it's kind of interesting. And if you're unsure, just film yourself while you do your session. Just record, watch it, and then delete it if you don't want to save the space. I want to talk about a couple of different things here, Roger, that can be kind of objective. One is the shape of your heart rate instead of the heart rate numbers. You put this down, and a lot of people, it's very in vogue to talk about the zone 2 and find your VO2 max and do this. My heart rate calculation is 220 minus my age plus 10 subtracted from the angle of the earth to the sun. That's my zone 2. Okay. Sure. But when we talk about shape, what does that look like? So somebody can have a conceptual idea of what this is.
If you were to put it on a graph, is it going up and down? If you want to use heart rate, this is an objective thing. You can also check your heart rate the day after, see what that's doing. Because as you get data over time, you might say, oh, well, this is higher or this is lower. This means something. You might want to tie that to something. But in this case, you're starting with your baseline. You're going to start exercising. Guess what? Your heart rate's going to go up. You're trying to push more blood through the system, and it's going to need to work harder to do that. Once it does that, it should go back down. Doesn't need to go back to normal. If it's going back to normal, then you're resting way too long. But you should see these little waves in your heart rate. And if you're seeing your heart rate being constantly elevated and it's not going back down, that's a sign that you're getting into that overreaching territory. You're getting to the point where I need to dial it back. Maybe I need to be done, or I need to spend longer recovering. And it's not always necessarily what you're doing. It is often the breaks that you take. So let's go back to a 16 kilo bell. A 2-hand swing, me doing 16 kilos is extremely light. I don't know why I would ever do it, but let's say I do.
Do 2 hands fit on a bell like that for you?
I don't know. I don't think they do, to be honest. But let's say I've got a bell that does. Even if I'm doing this, no matter how many reps I'm doing, if I don't wait long enough between sets, I'm going to get to a point where my system gets taxed. And I'm going to get to a point where my heart rate is not coming down between sets. And I'm getting to the point my body wants to make me pass out, even with a light bell. So it's not just about what you're doing. It is about the total volume, but it's also about the recovery in between. But if you're not seeing that heart rate drop, and if you're not starting to be able to pass the talk tests, you're not able to make complete sentences. If you start to feel things like you're getting dizzy, like these are really serious signs. You should not feel that every workout. Sometimes, yes, that's totally cool to do when you're really trying to push that, but you do it and then you back off. Even if you're doing these high intensity rounds, the people who really do this stuff right, they give themselves a good bit of recovery in between. Because if you don't, then you don't have the ability to push high intensity. If the point of high intensity is to create as much power output, meaning work and force together in a short amount of time, you can only do that one time unless you recover. So if you're doing that, you're going all out and then you're not recovering and then you're trying to do it again, your power output is going to be silly. So one of my favorite examples, if you look at these group fitness classes, like, oh, we're doing Tabata, which is, look it up. It's a protocol that I've never seen any recreational athletes do. These were professional cyclists, if I'm not mistaken, people who know how to push to a ridiculous degree. You have people who are working at a particular work to rest ratio and they're moving slow like molasses. There's nothing high intensity about what they're doing. They're
they're just doing it for the 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off.
Yeah, and they're high-fiving and they're barely sweating. It's like, okay, you're doing the work to rest ratios, but you're not working hard, and that's because you can't. Because the person who is instituting this either knows that this is not the right way to do it, or they don't know. They might say,
it's
hey,
only
it
supposed
makes
to be for
people
4
feel
minutes. Yeah, it's supposed to be for 4 minutes, and then you rest a bunch, and then you do it again really hard. But to your point, you do need to be somebody who can achieve that high level, which is, I mean, you can look at, there's a lot of studies out there that, and of things regarding like a VO2 max sort of thing, and what happens when you just have an open-ended, run where you just got to get it up to as fast as you can and for as long as you can, or if you you have 10 minutes to achieve this objective, and there's differentiating, and it does vary vastly between who you are as a person and this sort of that sort of thing, which to the point is like what this episode is. You are going to be different than me, where I will do a much more long ballistic set as opposed to a much more intense like grind set. And Roger's the exact opposite. We're kind of like yin and yang. I'll be yin. Let's talk about the repeatability index. And this is tracking 3 things. Because you talked about over time. So this is total time, total reps, and set consistency compared week to week. So this is one where you're going to get the information maybe over a month, Roger, or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you're just kind of tracking what you do and saying like, oh, this is like easy. You rate it afterwards, or what?
You want to get so the first one, we're talking about the total time of your workout. How long are your workouts taking? If you plan, this is all, you need to anchor your first workout in terms of RPE or percentage max or something like that. You need to have some sort of measure of how difficult something is. And then you need to see how long it takes. Now, if workout 1 and you are not a professional athlete and you don't have some kind of big, hairy goal and your workouts are taking 2 hours, they're too long. Let's just throw that out there. Now, unless you're doing a full hour of mobility, either way, you're probably not eating.
It's too long. I mean, like,
it's too long.
Come on.
So let's anchor it in difficulty. But if you're finding that the total time is going up, so the same workout more or less is now taking a lot longer, guess what? You're not working as hard. You're not working as fast. That's because you are tired.
You're beat.
So you're not able to repeat this. And if let's say you do this workout the first time and it crushes you, but you do it and you feel great, and then you want to do it again, and then you do it again, but it's taking an extra 15 minutes longer, then that's a real problem. And you can often see that from one workout to the next. So a good workout should be repeatable in a given time frame. Now, let's say you do 10, 15 minutes of warming up, mobility, like cardio, whatever you want to get ready. And then the main meat of the workout, the main lifting takes 45 minutes. And then in 3 weeks, same lifting takes you 15 minutes. Guess what? You're not in that zone anymore. So you want to look at the total rep time, or the total time it takes you to do all of that work. And that can be a big clue as to whether or not you're working too hard or it's time to progress.
Yeah, and you should know that in the Bells app, there's a sweet feature where it tracks your workouts as you do them. And then you can literally open your workout history and see how long it took you and how much weight you moved. And if you do the same workout twice and you get what Roger's talking about, or 3 times or whatever it is, then you can check it out. That's like an in-pod ad, Roger. Okay.
It is.
We are our best sponsor.
We are.
Let's talk about mood as a recovery signal. And
what about hold on, the other repeatability stuff?
Total reps. Sorry. I skipped over that.
We've got to just look at the total that you need to do. Now you need to think about the numbers may wave, right? Not every workout's going to have the same number of reps, and that's fine. But over a cycle, you should start to have a basic pattern. And if you're not hitting the same number of reps, then it's time to drop. Now, not necessarily. There are some workout schemes, one in which I'm doing now where it's more of what we would call a linear progression. And you're moving forward until you hit a bit of a wall. And then you keep doing this workout until your reps go up. But let's say I keep doing the same workout and my reps they're not increasing, but they're decreasing. It's time that I need to switch something out. I need to do some recovery. Something's wrong, because if I'm hitting a new benchmark every week and then I hit a stopping point where I can't quite hit that benchmark, but I'm increasing every week, then I'm good to go. But if my total reps are falling consistently, it's a huge sign that you are working too hard and you need to relax a little bit.
And does that play into the set consistency as well?
Mm-hmm.
Like the number of sets, sort of like the same thing, just based on
basic
sets instead
idea.
of reps?
Yeah, same basic idea.
Okay. I like that. Now let's talk about mood as a recovery signal. And as somebody who's trained for a marathon and subsequently ran said marathon and finished it, I will tell you that in that training, I possibly have done some overtraining or overreaching a little bit too much.
There's a big difference. Overreaching is intentional. Overreaching is I'm going to really, really push myself. Overtraining is I'm being a dum-dum. So let's not conflate those two.
There's a little bit of both.
That's fair, but I don't want people to think that they're, you can get caught up with the semantics, but overreaching when it's done right is good and purposeful and makes you better. Overtraining is a bad idea.
Yeah, and that's going to leave you in that worse mood sort of thing, and probably too much. And all the way to your point at the beginning, in those particular days, the hunger for junk food and crap is like uncontrollable, which is why, I was a big guy running a marathon, Roger. I'm already a big guy, but I was a bigger guy. probably like people saw me show up and they're like, oh boy, this guy's out of his depth. If it's one of my favorite indicators of knowing whether I did a good workout, and it falls into this, is I feel really good afterwards. I feel really good when I'm done. I feel good throughout the rest of the day into the evening. My body has this sort of like it worked, but it's relaxed now sort of state. And then obviously if you're no change, you just wake up, you worked out, and then you went about your day and you had no change. Would you say that's too easy?
Yeah. If you don't feel like you worked out, then you're probably too easy. And then converse is if you feel like you're absolutely crushed, then you went too hard, and you'll feel you don't want to move. You don't want to do anything else. Nothing else really sounds ideal. And if you're, someone tempts you with going to your favorite restaurant, you'd rather sit on the couch. That's a pretty good sign that you're overdone, whether it's from exercise or life. But generally speaking, if you're not feeling, motivated, if you're not feeling like you want to go out, then you may want to evaluate your activity level, your exercise.
Okay. What about the post-workout energy curve? Is being hungry good?
Well, it depends on how hungry, but generally, yes, it is. It generally means that you've done some work, and your body wants to replenish. So that's a point for, hey, I've gone hard enough. But again, are you ravenous, and are you making
Poor
bad
choices?
decisions? Yeah. So, there's a point where your body almost goes into emergency mode. And it's like, for me, I'm not hungry after a workout for a little while. My system's kind of coming down. But if you get into a place where you're not kind of coming down gradually and having a natural hunger emerge, and you're getting to a point where I got to eat now, you may be overdoing it.
What if you just finished and you just like, I got to take a nap right now? Is that too much?
Probably. Probably. I mean, that honestly, that doesn't usually happen.
That's kind of hard to get to.
Not that I'm aware of. If you've overdone it, then you probably are doing something with your adrenal glands are taxed, and you're really kind of edgy and wired for a little while, even though you might feel a little bit fatigued. So, There are some cases, but it usually takes a little while for that stuff to set in.
Okay. And again, if there's no change, it's probably too easy. Just keep that as a steady. All right, Roger, explain this to me. The 5 workout rule.
No.
Okay. Well, you'll have to tune in next time for the 5 workout rule. When 1 is not enough, because 1 might not be enough to determine, right?
Well, okay. So, what do you think you can gauge from looking at what we're really looking at as trends, right? Do you think you can gauge a lot from a single workout?
No, because what if you just had a good day, or what if you just had a bad day? And how would you even know if you had nothing to compare it to? So you need a little bit more of a sample size, right?
Yeah. And that's
like
it.
5
really
workouts.
You're really looking at trends over the course of time. So you're going to know a lot. And a lot of this is going to be along the same lines. 5 workout rule is just giving you a fixed amount of time to look at and see if changes need to be made. You should have an idea within that period. And again, if everything is way too easy within that point, not hard enough. If it's too hard, you'll know.
Yeah, you might even know that after 3 if it's too hard or too easy.
Probably,
or 2.
It's good to look at. It's good to look at a trend over time, and that's enough. That's enough of a time where you should be willing to make a change after that many workouts if that's what you're feeling. If you're missing reps over 5 workouts, if you're missing 3 of those workouts, these are
not showing up.
Yeah, these are big things to pay attention to.
Yeah, and I will say if you're to the point where you're not showing up because you're overworked, accept that and take some rest and reevaluate and recalibrate and then go back into it. Don't spiral out. I know a lot of people will do this, and this is possibly harkens back to the avatar of the guy who has to feel sore, or the girl has to feel sore all the time, or the usually successful people will understand what it takes to be successful, so they want to push that envelope. So taking that time off makes it a little hard to do. And listening to your body is really key. And yeah, it's a fine line, like Roger mentioned. It's a fine line from not doing enough and doing too much, but you got to be open-minded enough, I think, to accept that I need to take a time off. I need to take this day as an activity day, mostly. Instead of a 2-mile walk, maybe I am doing that 4-mile Roger walk. It's one of those things. All right. Well, let's give them the checklist, Roger. Quick takeaways are, after every session, you can ask, did I break a sweat and feel warm? Okay, you agree?
I do.
Were the set's honest but not crushing? All right, that's good. That's a good one. Like, honesty is the best policy. Did my reps stay clean and consistent? Okay, or are you slowing down and still trying to fight against these stop signs? Did your heart rate recover normally? Do you feel slightly better after? Even more good looking? This is a big one. Could you repeat this same workout the next day, tomorrow? Like, hey, that was good. I can do that tomorrow. And that's sort of like a really good gauge, I think. And do I feel normal or energized a few hours later? I'd say that pretty much, if you listen to nothing and just did that checklist after your workouts, you'll be all right. Wouldn't you say, Roger?
I would. And, this stuff is, again, a lot of it is very subjective, but if you're one of these data people, you can pick a metric. You can pick sleep. Sleep will be disrupted by overtraining. If you're pushing too hard and you're skewing, you're messing with your hormones, then by all means, that can interfere with sleep. So you can pay attention to that. You can pay attention, again, heart rate monitors are good. Monitor what, your caloric intake, your cravings, moods. Again, we get into some more subjective things, but there are some objective things you can do. And if you are really interested in this particular thing, again, I'm not dismissing HRV. I just don't know enough about it, and I haven't seen a compelling enough case mixed with the monitors, mixed with the user, You know, if you are a high level athlete and this is one of the tools that you're using, this makes a lot of sense. If you were extremely diligent and detail oriented and you get top of the line stuff, but I mean, the things I know that actually measure this stuff are not great at measuring stuff.
No, I wear a watch 23 and a half hours a day. And some mornings I wake up, I didn't do anything the day before, workout wise. And I wake up and it's like, you are not ready to train, pal. You only slept for 3 hours, and I know I was in bed for 7. And I don't sleep for most of it. I don't want to discount that. But and I'm not saying that it's not reliable, but in the end, you have to make that executive decision based on the reality of your body.
Sure, and just HRV is something. Heart rate variability is just the rate and the way that your heart beats over time. Is thought to be an indicator of how stressed out you are. So you
compared to your workout times, isn't it something like that, or is it
no?
Just
this is resting.
This is your resting heart, and then your, mine says balanced frequently. So whatever. I don't know if that's accurate or not.
I don't want to get into HRV. I'm not an expert in it, shit. but basically the idea is that the way your heart beats is an indicator of your stress level. And if your heart is beating in a really even
erratic
way, no, not erratic. If it's very, very even, what I've heard is that it seems as though your body is really trying to conserve energy because you're not in a place where you're able to not conserve energy. So you want a little more variability in your heart rate. Yeah. That's going to be a healthier thing for you. Whereas if your heart rate is not varying at all, it may mean that you're too stressed out. So, that would be in a more objective measure. And I definitely see why people are studying it, because it would make talking about this stuff a lot easier if you could just wear a tracker and that tracker were accurate, which I think we're working on, and it would say, hey, good to go, slow down, whatever. The problem is, the people who use this stuff tend to create kind of an index where you're a coach and you're going to ask your athlete, hey, how well did you sleep? What are your emotional stresses like? How's your nutrition? And then they'll check heart rate. They'll check HRV and these things. And then they'll say, okay, based on all of that, maybe let's have an easier day. I mean, I don't think it's very complicated. Sometimes you walk in and you've had a rotten day. You're kind of emotionally distraught. Some bad things have happened and you're already sapped of energy. Maybe you want to go a little lighter. There are times when I've had a bad day and I really want to lift heavy stuff and I'm hitting PRs left and right. I do need to watch out though for hurting myself, because I tend, my tendency is to want to overestimate. So I have to check myself a little bit to make sure that I stay safe, but your mood will change things. So there you can kind of create your own little index of all of these things. You can list them. How, what is my life like right now? Because we forget, especially people who have full-time jobs and families and responsibilities, that sometimes in your regular life, when it gets stressful, you've already worked out even before your workout. That you've already got some stuff to recover from, and exercise will make you more resilient, and then it will put some room back onto your plate for sure. But you may not want to do the exact same workout that you had planned, because it means that you're going to have to recover more than you normally would, because you've already got some other stressors happening.
Yeah, a good balance between mental and physical energy. My first question every session is, how do you feel? And at first people will start to tell me like, oh, my back and this and that. I'm like, okay. And then later in the session, they're like, oh my God, it was the worst. I'm so stressed about this. I couldn't even believe this. I didn't sleep and I'm like, when I ask you how you feel, that's what I mean. Include that. So in the words of do you got anything else, Roger?
Better, worse, or the same. Every set you do. When I've got somebody who I'm working with who's stressed out, better, worse, at the same, or better, worse, or the same. We do something, maybe something's a little off, a little injured, better, worse, or the same. You're coming in, you're a little run down, better, worse, or the same. And often I will know what to do because people say, hey, how you feeling? Actually, a little better. So activity, people are responding well to activity. Their energy levels are going up. We're still not going to crush them, but they're doing better than they thought they could. And they feel like they got some work done. If it's the same, no change, then we still kind of keep things in that, that steady, okay, I'm not going to overdo this. And if it's worse, then obviously maybe we just need to go for a walk and talk.
Yeah, sounds good. If anything, use that. And I think that's about it. So in the immortal words of Ice Cube, chickadee check yourself before you riggedy wreck yourself. Okay? Because overtraining is bad for your health. That's enough. Be sure to download the Bells app. Like I mentioned before, it's in the Apple App Store. It's free, and it's got all kinds of cool things that you can use to be a better kettlebeller. Leave the comments and blah, blah, blah here. If you made it this far, good job. Give us a thumbs up, for fuck's sake. I keep peddling this nonsense like that. All right, the internet told me to do that. All right, Thanks for listening. Stay strong, everybody.
Bye, everybody.